Well, good morning, everybody. Thanks so much for showing up today and welcome. My name is Rebecca Redwine. I'm a partner with Hendren, Redwine, and Malone in Raleigh, North Carolina. I do Chapter 11 debtor work throughout the state of North Carolina. I am also the chair of the Carolinas Network, which covers North Carolina and South Carolina. And I'm also the vice director of spring programs for iWork. And I could not be more excited about the panel that we've got for you today. Before we get to that, just a couple of housekeeping items. First, thanks so much to all of our incredible sponsors. You guys should see a sponsor tab. Encourage you to click on that, learn more about our sponsors, and learn how you and your firm could benefit from becoming a sponsor of iWork. In addition to that, you should have a chat function to the right-hand side of your screen. Keep an eye out on that. That's where your CLE code will pop up at some point during about halfway through the presentation. And if you've got any questions for our panelists today, of course, plug it in there and we'll get to them within the next hour. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce the folks that we've got on the panel today who are all just rock stars. And I know that you are as excited as I am to hear from them about demystifying rainmaking. So let's run through that and then we'll jump right into the questions. So first up, we've got Tobey Daluz. Tobey, wave your hand in case everybody, there we go. All right, so Tobey is a litigation partner and a member of Ballard Spahr's bankruptcy and restructuring group. She focuses on corporate restructuring, workouts, distressed mergers and acquisitions, and general bankruptcy litigation. Tobey is actually the founding member of her firm's office in Wilmington, Delaware, and she was the office managing partner from 2003 to 2011. From 2011 to 2016, she served on the firm's executive management committee as the partner in charge of attorney career advancement and was responsible for the recruitment, training, professional development, compensation, evaluation, and promotion of nearly 300 attorneys. Effective July 1st, 2016, she was elected by her partners to serve a 3-year term on the firm's board and was reelected for a second 3-year term that began July 1st, 2019. Over the past 2 decades, Tobey has served on the Third Circuit's merit selection panel and participated in the review and recommendation of candidates for 5 Eastern District of Pennsylvania bankruptcy judge positions. She is now chair of the Third Circuit's merit selection panel, leading to the appointment of 2 bankruptcy judges for the District of Delaware. Tobey is also the founding chair of iWork Delaware. So welcome, Tobey. All right, next up, we've got Katie Goodman. Katie, wave to our folks. There we go. Katie started her career working for a middle market private equity firm based in Atlanta. And her first foray into the restructuring world was stepping into restructure a portfolio company. Shortly thereafter, the equity firm had another distressed investment, and Katie hired GGG Partners, LLC, to act as chief restructuring officer, where she had the opportunity to work closely with the restructuring team through a Chapter 11. By this point, restructuring work seemed a whole lot more interesting than working in private equity. So Katie joined GGG in 2001 as an associate, became a partner in 2004, and a managing partner in 2007. Over the past 20 years, Katie has worked as a restructuring advisor, chief restructuring officer, federal and state receiver, and assignee in assignment for the benefit of creditors. She has also been appointed as a Chapter 11 trustee. Her clients vary from small, closely held companies to publicly traded corporations in many industries, including healthcare, information technology, education, manufacturing, and distribution. All right, and next up is Mia Drennan. We've got, Mia comes to us from across the pond, as they would say. Mia is the co-founder and group president of GLAS, a firm which is now recognized as an award-winning global leader in the independent agency and trustee space, and considered a disruptor in the bank agency and trustee market. Mia has significant expertise in restructuring and bankruptcy and has worked on a number of high-profile cases. She has also been instrumental in establishing the independent agency model across the district lending private credit market. Mia is a seasoned banking professional with expertise working on large global restructuring cases and workouts. By background, she has over 20 years of experience in the capital markets with specific experience working on a variety of debt instruments. Prior to starting GLAS, Mia built the EMEA trustee and agency business at the Bank of New York Mellon and was a pioneer in the structured finance marketplace. Mia has also held high-profile positions at Citibank, Simmons & Simmons LLP, and KPMG. And last but not least, we've got Rosa, Rojas Vertiz. Rosa is a Mexican attorney with expertise in financing, secured transactions, and insolvency. She has a full perspective of insolvency as she has dealt with insolvency cases from a big firm as a transactional attorney to the judicial branch, where Rosa has issued opinions and drafted judgments, to academia as a part-time teacher and instructor and researcher. Rosa advises individuals and corporations in insolvency matters and does selective litigation. She's also working to improve the insolvency system in Mexico and is in process of coordinating a course for federal judges in order to give them a better understanding of the goals of an insolvency proceeding. Rosa prepares courses and workshops, teaches and gives conferences, participates in webinars, writes and does whatever is necessary to improve the insolvency system in Mexico. Rosa has been coordinating working groups with the 3 main bar associations of Mexico to convince its Congress to approve a bill on consumer insolvency. So if that doesn't intimidate you, I don't know what will. I mean, that's fantastic. So I stand by my comment that we've got some rock star panelists here today, and I'm excited to jump right into it. So my first question is going to go to Tobey. So Tobey, right off the bat, how do you get your referrals?
Thanks, Rebecca. I appreciate it. And it's wonderful to be here. My only regret is that I can't see everybody in the audience, because I'm sure I have lots of friends out there. And I'd love to see everybody's face again. Before I start, I just want to say that, these answers are personal to me. And I think it's safe to say for everybody who's participating on the panel today that we are sharing our individual experiences and that they really differ based on your practice. Of course, I'm a lawyer and we have other financial advisors and people who practice in other countries who are participating this morning. And I think the experiences that we'll share and the guidance that we may provide or advice, it's not really about what's right or what's wrong. There hopefully will be some commonalities in our experiences, and hopefully we'll provide some takeaways that people can implement in their own stories that will benefit them. But again, some of this may resonate with you and other things may not. So I think I should start by saying that I've been practicing bankruptcy law for 31 years in a big law firm, in an AmLaw 100 law firm. It's a national practice, despite the fact that I'm in Delaware. It's very much a national practice, and it's creditor side. So with that preface, I'd say right now, I get my business from 3 different sources. I'd say large institutions give me about 1/3 of my work. They are clients with whom I've built relationships over a number of years and for whom I do nearly all of their Chapter 11 creditor side work. The other 1/3 of my business, I'd say, comes from friends, classmates, law school classmates, former colleagues who are now senior enough in-house that they can provide referrals to me. I would say that's a line of referrals that inures to the benefit of the more mature ladies among us. There is something to be said about the fact that there's maturation in the world of referrals and where you get your business from, and as your colleagues take on more, your friends and colleagues take on more important positions in-house, and as you grow more senior, then they're more able to send work directly to you. The 3rd category, and I think this goes directly to what you're asking here, Rebecca, is I think about 1/3 of my work comes from referrals. And for me, referrals really take on 2 different categories. The first is external referrals, and that's what I think we think about most as bankruptcy lawyers. We it's a very referral heavy practice. We tend to get referrals from not just lawyers at other law firms, but also from financial advisors. And with respect to those referrals, I will say that I've learned a great deal over the years. That for me, building a network for referrals is about quality and less about quantity. I think once you realize that the best referral relationships are those people who think of you first and it's likely because you think of them first. So you really can't overlook the reciprocal nature of the referral relationship. And once you figure that out, then you really need to think about a narrower group of people. Now, for some people, speaking and writing is a great source of kind of building your reputation and becoming, kind of a target of referrals. But for me, it has really been over the years working on a smaller group of relationships. Now, I think it's important for those of us who practice in large law firms to never forget the internal referrals. And when we talked about this and preparing for this presentation, I realized that it's really not something that I've talked about much before. One of the advantages of being involved in firm governance, which, Rebecca nicely went through that long litany of things I've been doing over the past 15 to 20 years, is that I know my firm and I know its practice areas and I know my partners. And what I have done over the years is identified at least one or sometimes two partners in practice areas that have lots of crossover in the insolvency world. They may be IP lawyers, it may be environmental lawyers, M&A, securities work, but they become my best and strongest internal referral sources. And they have clients that need Chapter 11 work. Sometimes that leads me to sitting on a committee, representing an unsecured creditor. It could be someone who wants to acquire assets out of Chapter 11. But you can't ignore developing, if you're in a large multi-practice firm, developing those internal relationships, understanding when it's right to bring in those referral relationships, because again, I'm very dedicated to ensuring that when I refer work internally, it's back to the referral sources that are committed to me. So I think that's pretty much it for this first question. I would just say that I'm happy to hear that iWork has started its own diversity committee. And I think it's worth noting that, when you're a woman, especially a woman of color, it is true that a lot of my referral sources happen to be women and women of color. They are not, it's not exclusively women and women of color or even lawyers of color. It makes sense though, because if you're going to build, honest, genuine relationships, you tend to be able to bond with those that have common interests, common background, or who share a common goal. So, but I think I must stress that, even in my internal referral networks in the firm, external are not limited to just women and lawyers of color. That some of my longest standing referral relationships are with white men, and that some of the largest cases I've ever been referred from other colleagues in the insolvency area are
well, and I love that point too, Tobey, that you made about, quality, not quantity. That's important. And I think it's fascinating too, from your perspective of working in a big firm. Mia, I know that you're not in a law firm, so would love to hear your experiences on how you get referrals and also what resources or other sources you've looked to help build your career over time.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca and Tobey. I have to say a couple of the things that you just mentioned there really resonated with me, particularly about the fact that, certainly in the industry that we all operate in, there is obviously, a majority of of white males that we obviously all have to get business from, right? So I totally understand where you're coming from. I think just to set the scene a little bit, because I'm not in a law firm, and you know, when you talk about rainmaking, it really kind of resonates with me, having worked in a very you know, a leading UK law firm in the 90s. I kind of have learned, I guess, my craft a little bit from working with them. So just a couple of things. When I left the Bank of New York, which was actually in 2005, I've set up 2 businesses since leaving them. This one is the most successful of the 2, and this is my kind of passion. But I think one of the first things was I didn't really understand the power of a brand until I left. So, you know, one of the things that, you know, I left the bank, and I thought, right, I'm going to go and do some consultancy work under my own banner. And it was called Square Mile Connections. It's still going today. It's another conversation. But anyway, I didn't get business initially, and I couldn't work it out. And I had to make that brand something. So in the end, I learned all about brand and marketing. And that has been really the foundation for GLAS. To get off, you know, to have a business now, which is, you know, a global business in Australia, France, Germany, the US, and obviously the UK is amazing, right? 10 years. And it has all been about referrals. And, you know, starting out, it was myself and my business partner, who was a partner in a law firm. Our ethos is you're only ever as good as your last deal. So we work on transactions, and we make people's lives easier. People, lawyers, specifically lawyers, and all the people that want to get an interest out of this transaction, we strive to make their deals easier, right? So our ethos and DNA has been about that. And when we did our couple of 100 meetings around the City of London initially with my old network that hadn't really been used for about 5 or 7 years, we finally got a gig, and we did a fantastic job. We nailed it, and we built the trust of those people, and it kind of snowballed from there. So for me, the referrals are really built on trust and integrity, and knowing they can come to us and we will get the job done, which I think is very different in the US. There's a lot of, you know, people in my space, but ultimately I know that, you know, I've got a network of screaming fans. The firm has got a network of screaming fans because the folks we've got have got that DNA. And so, you know, every single person we deal with is a potential referral source. And I love it when I get an email from somebody saying, I've just sent a note to them to tell them to use you guys, you know, because you did such a good job. So having people doing a good job for folk who are talking about you without you even knowing is the best source of business. And I talk to my sales team, and I say to them, you know, really and truly, you shouldn't have to make a cold call these days. You know, go to your network of referrals. We've got so many people, whether they be lawyers, bankers, people in funds, deal advisors, etc. You know, somebody can introduce you. There's not that many people in the world that you need to make a cold call to get business. So that has been very successful. In terms of other ways of getting referrals, I think it is network. And I'm very honoured to say that iWork has played a huge part in my life, actually, over the last couple of years. You know, it surprises me when I look back on this journey. For the last 3 or 4 years, I've been involved with iWork in the UK, and now I'm involved at the international level. I hadn't heard of iWork till about 3 or 4 years ago, when we finally managed to get the London network off the ground. I don't understand why, but anyway, I'm very glad it found me, and I'm glad I found it. I've been lucky enough to be involved with a lot of the conferences and so on, and meet all of you guys. And so it has been, and has actually physically been, a source of business referrals across our business, and we have done the same. So network is definitely one of the ways that we are able to I source my own referrals. Another thing that works for me is pay it forward. I always take an opportunity where I see one to introduce business to my clients or other people I know in my network and so on. I'm not looking to get something out of it. But I think, you know, ultimately that is the way it works. You have that network of people that you think, oh, it's, you know, that's a good thing for so-and-so, and they remember you for it, and they will come back to you. But I do it because I think that's the right way to generate business, to be honest. And, you know, it's, as I said, I think in terms of what resources have I used, I think it really has been down to building a good reputation. I didn't have access to mentors as we do today, but having people that you can talk to, whether it's friends or clients or whoever it is who can help you in your career, and always say yes to every opportunity. And I just thought, before we move on, because I don't want to take up the whole session, but for those of you that know Simmons & Simmons, just going back to those couple of years in the English law firm in the mid-90s, I had an interesting role. I used to basically do all the administration around their repackaging programs in the capital market space, and I set up a little profit centre for them to do that. And this is a top city law firm in the UK. Merrill Lynch and Bear Stearns at the time, and others were the big clients in New York. And I remember saying to these partners, we could get more business. And they said, well, what do you mean? You know, we're Simmons & Simmons, you know, we can always get business. And I said, no, well, go and see your clients in New York. Go and see all of these people, take the associates and the lawyers and go and see them. And so they said, can you arrange it for us? So I took a couple of partners to New York for a week and filled their day with all these meetings. And of course, they smashed it in terms of business opportunity. So always take the opportunity to meet your clients and, you know, get out there and just ask for business.
I love your answers. I love that when preparing for this panel and the panel that we had last night on rainmaking as well, that there are so many common themes that rise to the top, right? And one of them is branding. And I think that goes across any field that you're in the insolvency space, whether you're a financial advisor, an attorney, but also the thing that keeps rising to the top is just do a good job. Do a good job is one of the ways to get referrals. So Katie, I'm going to kick the next question to you. And I have to say, I love this question. I think it's fascinating. Looking back, what advice would you give yourself in your first year of practice? That's a aha Oprah moment right there. But I know you're just really jazzed up to answer that one.
So to reiterate the point you made and that Mia made, and I think everyone knows this in their first year, it's execute with excellence, okay? And you have to do a good job every day. And that really in your first year involves making other people look good, right? You're not the lead on the project, but you have to make everyone around you look as good as possible and execute absolutely brilliantly. If I look back at my first year, the big piece of advice I would have given myself is to not be so intimidated. I'm a natural introvert. At the time, I still blushed every time I talked to an adult. Right? I was a very, very shy person. And the thought of networking and going out and speaking to people actually made me feel quite ill, right? And I look at it, it's like, that's pretty normal. You're walking into a room of people that you don't know. And really, I think if I've recognized at the time that it really is the eat your vegetables, right? The more that you do it, then the next time you walk into a room, it's not walking into a room of strangers. You're walking into a room of strangers plus a couple of people that you've talked to. And I think that, and Tobey hit on this as well, is really making connections with not everyone in that room. I work in Atlanta, Georgia, and the main topics of conversation as icebreakers are shooting things, generally animals. And I don't know anything about sport. I can't make connections about those topics, right? I'm just not that person. But I can talk about other things, right? I can talk about travel. I can talk about current events. I can make connections on that social piece of conversation, and actually remember people and remember things and follow up with people on things that are not that, well, I'm going to call it the boy conversation, right? But but then I have, and if I'd have known at the time that you can form genuine relationships with people that you then work with for many, many years without having to pretend to be someone you're not, I think I would have liked to have known that at the time. The other thing that I didn't do when I started out, especially in my first year or few years, is I didn't write things down in a way that I would now find helpful. And so when someone asks a question such as, have you worked with this institution? Have you worked with this person? I can't remember them. And I never thought I would become the person that could not remember what projects they'd worked on or which companies they'd worked on, or, you know, have you ever worked in this industry? And so keeping lists of people and lenders in situations and who worked on a project and really capturing all that information. You don't realize it in your first year because every project is fairly important, but 20 years on, my brain's like a sieve. I can't remember what happened 20 years ago and what I was working on. So building that record of your own resume in a way that you really understand it and then can reach back out with people is very important as well. And then the final piece of advice I would give to me in my first year, which Mia touched on, I think it's absolutely critical, is to really say yes to everything. If it's a new project, and I think that most people don't do this. People think they'll say yes to something something new, but they don't. But say yes to every project, say yes to travel, say yes to doing things when you have no idea how to do them. My first turnaround project was actually when I worked at the equity firm, and I was asked to go to Chicago from Atlanta, terminate the entire management team, and see what needed to be done. I was 25 years old. And even though I had no idea what I was doing, I booked a ticket, I went to Chicago, I terminated the management team, and then sat there and thought, okay, what now? But just saying yes was the key piece in that. So.
I think that's great. In your first couple, or at least in my first couple of years of practice, I always remember getting phone calls from clients and thinking, you need to call a lawyer. But you have dialed the wrong number. So that really hits home. How about you, Rosa? How would you answer that question? What advice would you give yourself in your first year of practice?
Hello, everyone. Well, I want to thank, first of all, Ebert for the opportunity for being in this panel. And well, our moderator, Rebecca Redwine, and organizer, Rebecca DeMarv. I'm really happy and I feel privileged, you know, to have been invited. Well, now going to the question. Well, in my experience, you know, it was when I just became a lawyer, it was very important for me, well, to have to create a very good opinion, a very good impression. You know, I was in a firm it was a large firm for Mexican standards. We don't have huge firms as in other countries, but you know, I wanted to impress my boss, my colleagues, so I would take loads of work. You know, I would work like for 16 hours a day because I wanted to, you know, give very good results and have everyone happy with me. And I mean, that worked well because everyone was happy with me, but then I realized I was so busy. I didn't really have time to think how I wanted to develop, you know, my career, what I really wanted, how I saw myself. I just didn't have time for that. And I do think it is important, you know, that since you start, you know, your career, you define what you want. You know, if you want to be an expert in a field, maybe develop an area, learn more about a topic, and also to start to be visible. You know, if engaged maybe in conferences or write or, you know, you have to define what you want to be, because you can be with loads of work in a firm and then for years and years and years, and then you suddenly say, well, you know, now what's next? So I think it's very important that you know and you define what you want since you start, and then you start negotiating, you know, negotiating with your boss and with your colleagues. I mean, I agree with what Mia and Katie were saying, take the opportunities. Yes, but I think it's also important to learn to set limits sometimes, you know, to know when you have to do something and when you're not going to do something, because you have to build a good reputation, you know, to know what you're doing. And sometimes there are some things that you don't want to do. And this negotiation thing, it's very important. There's a book, I mean, by the way, I would like to recommend it. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's called Women Don't Ask. And I think it's true. Usually women negotiate less than men. You know, men, since they're boys, they're negotiating the whole time. And for us, it's like, well, I don't know if I should ask more, you know, maybe I will see myself like conflicting, or maybe, you know, we kind of doubt a lot about this. I think you have to do it, and you have to do it since you start, you know, and I think that's very important from my point of view.
Well, Rosa, what would you say are the challenges that face women in particular in becoming rainmakers in their field or becoming leaders in their field?
Well, in Mexico, finance law, insolvency law is really dominated by men. I mean, there are very few women experts. Of course, there are a lot women associates in firms, but you know, there's a glass ceiling. So not all of them become partners. And then usually these partners are not the ones running the firm. Like in Mexico, usually firms, you know, they're run by the founding partner. You know, and this maybe 2-3 persons will stay there like forever, and they will make most of the decisions. And these founding partners, well, usually not women. So I think it is very important that you'll have to work much more, I think, in order to stand out. You have to work much more, you know, than men in order to be noticed and to be respected. And I think it is important that you try to be visible. How you can be visible? Well, we just say that. Well, you can engage, you know, as a speaker, you know, and in conferences. You can write. You can maybe teach in seminar. This is important because otherwise it will be very difficult to stand out. And a tip I would have, if you do participate in this these activities, is I would recommend that you prepare yourself very well, because you know, anyone can speak in a conference or in a panel, but the important thing is that you make a contribution, that you make a difference, that people see that you really dominate what you're saying, you know, that you really come up with a good idea. You know, it's not just speaking about anything. It's important to prepare yourself very well, you know, in everything you do, in order to make a difference.
Well, Tobey, talking about challenges, what do you think is the hardest part of building a successful practice?
Of course, like most things, I can't give one answer, but I think the primary answer, and I think this will resonate with many people participating, is the fact that, you know, bankruptcy is such a cyclical practice, and we all have to be prepared for those times when all of a sudden you pick your head up and you go, okay, what's in the pipeline? Because there are periods in this profession as an insolvency lawyer where you're completely inundated and you don't know when you're going to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and then the economy's good. And for some, it may not matter, depending on, you know, kind of what your niche is, or if you're in a firm that has a platform where you're still going to continue to get, you know, debtor work or certain, you know, DIP financing work. But for others of us who are at risk of, you know, not being as busy during a downturn, there are many people who have, you know, figured out how you pivot, how you either you do some front end work, or you do some commercial litigation, or you you know, you just find ways to stay busy in the insolvency world while keeping a full plate doing maybe things outside of the insolvency world. The other really tricky thing for me over the past 15 years has been balancing client development with the myriad of administrative responsibilities I've had at the firm. So those of you who run firms or run departments or who have their own firm, you'll understand what I mean. There's so many hours of the day. And when you are a firm-wide member of the executive team, and I would spend, you know, all day on the phone with my partners or with other lawyers in the firm, managing the firm, and then doing legal work at night. Well, when was I doing the client development work? And really making time to maintain your networks and your connections while trying to balance those two very important responsibilities has been a real challenge for me. And I'm actually looking forward to maybe moving into a new stage of my career where it's made less administrative work and kind of back to the roots of my practice fully.
That's great. I mean, it always goes back to, gosh, I think I've signed myself up for too much stuff, or someone else has signed me up for too much stuff. Is the feeling that sometimes you walk away with at the end of the day. Well, how about you, Mia? I mean, do you have comments on that, or how have you created opportunities for yourself in your practice?
Well, I mean, it's one of the things I just like to highlight as well, which Rosa said, and I totally wholeheartedly agree with, is that you ask, you know, people, and, you know, people know I ask for business. I'm very hungry when it comes to getting opportunities. And so I always ask my clients for business and new clients and referrals for business. So I think, you know, that's what you need to do, because, you know, I could give you an example. We are, one of the things that my firm is known for is we get involved in, you know, quite complicated restructuring and bankruptcy situations. And that was actually one of the leading reasons why I was able to get the firm off the ground 10 years ago. And when we became active in the US, we created our business in the US in 2016, I think. We had to go through the pain of getting regulated and so on. But our clients came to us and said, we've got a really good job for you. We'd like to be the successor of administrative agency on this transaction, which I can share with you because it's public, EcoBat. And it's not going very well. Okay, fair enough. Anyway, the long and short of it is that we were asked if we would take instruction from the creditors to put the company into involuntary bankruptcy, which, you know, apparently it's not something that agents do every day of the week in the US. So we went ahead and we did what we were being instructed to do, and we obviously managed our risk and we put the company into involuntary bankruptcy. And there was a long drawn out case then, which ended up in litigation. So that's kind of, you know, that then presented an opportunity, because unlike a lot of the sort of old school, you know, trustee banks and so on, who perhaps don't really want to do those kind of things for various reasons, we actually did sort of demonstrate that we were able to, you know, do this, and that provided me with many opportunities in the US and continues to do so. But just moving away from actually walking the walk on transactions, when I was thinking about the panel and kind of comments to add, it's also about making your network, your clients, and your referral for referrers look good. So how do you do that? You create a panel like this. You bring people together to talk about something which is going to add value to somebody else who may be a buyer in the future. And so I always look at opportunities where either myself or one of my team or a number of my team can be involved in panels, thought leadership, writing articles, getting information out to people collaboratively with clients and other people. And I think that's been, you know, very successful in trying to create opportunities. And then finally, mentoring. You know, I personally enjoy it. Because I think that, you know, particularly ladies of a certain age, you know, it's our duty to kind of, you know, pay it forward and to help younger ladies, you know, be successful in the future, or anyone, not just ladies, but, and so I think mentoring is very important as well. And you never quite know, you know, who those people know. So, yeah, that's the kind of way I've been able to do this.
I love that. And it kind of leads into the next question, really dovetails with it, which is what personality characteristic has allowed you to become a successful rainmaker? I know that a lot of folks who are out there who are looking for mentors or who have a mentoring relationship, that's something that I've talked with before with some of my mentors. Rosa, what would your response to that be?
Wow, well, I think there are a lot. I think it's not only one. I think one of them, it's well, to believe in yourself. I think that's very important. And you need to have a project, you need to have a project, and to work for that project, it's important that you have determination, that you know what you want and you go for it. You need to make maybe a list. I like to do like a weekly planner, like every week, what's what I want to achieve this week. And this is the things I have to do. And I really try to accomplish that. I feel much better the weekend if I finished, what I decided I was going to do during that week. I think it helps you to be organized. It helps you to discipline. I think discipline is important. If you are after a goal, well, you have to be persistent, and you have to fulfill it, and you have to work on it. I think every day. Also, I think working hard, it's very important. That's something you cannot skip. You have to work very hard to reach your goals. And I said persistency. And I think that another thing that helps very much in our field, it's also, or maybe in all, I don't know, it's to be a good listener. If you have a team, you have to listen to your team. You have to listen to your employees, to your partners, to your clients, to your customers. You want to know that you're really helping them. You need to have a genuine interest, to help them solve their problems. And it is very important that your employees and your team feels comfortable, to make sure, they are okay, they feel good, because that's the way they're going to give, the best. That's what you really want, to get the best out of people, to give the best service, and to make people feel good, because that's really our purpose, to help people solve their problems.
Absolutely. I mean, it becomes kind of simple at the end of the day, right? It's advice that you ladies are giving, which is just incredible, but you can really boil it down to basics. We do have a question from one of our attendees, and heads up, Katie, because I'm going to toss it to you, and then I'd love to hear the other panelists chime in. But the question is, I'm hearing a theme that time management can be key to marketing. Do you have any routine events or processes that you have found that have worked for you? And do you have suggestions on what not to do, or what was a waste of time? So how about you, Katie? Anything that any events that you always frequent, or anything that you do in your practice, either on a daily basis or on a weekly basis, that makes a difference with your marketing?
So what I try to do internally, right, especially when people are, I think we all get on downers with our ability to bring in business, and with my team, I really focus on this, is really work with them on micro goals, right? So if it's, gosh, I'm reaching out to these people and they're not returning my call, it's like, okay, so you read this really good article, let me share it with you. Do you think they would have an interest, right? And starting off, especially with my team, in a very, very small way, to go ahead and get them out of that rut that they get in when they get on it's a marketing downer, right? So especially within the group, and those people I check in with 2 times a week, right? Because everyone needs that little bit of positivity. And then in terms of events, right, especially when we're in a little bit of a lull, we're trying to get people out to market a little bit more, I found that some of the larger conferences, right, once a year are a really good boost. I think it really does remind you, and this is why iWork is so terrific, of course, right? It reminds you that you are part of a community, and it does give you that big lift that you occasionally need. And so, but really plugging into some of those, externally, but also working with your team internally on much, much smaller things. And I think then when you get that little bit of momentum, everything falls into place. It's every time, actually, and I've been doing this 20 years. Tobey, of course, has talked about the ups and downs. She's been in the business for 30 years, but it always, if you work on it a bit, comes together.
Tobey, how about you? How would you answer that question?
I I think I have two kind of overgeneralities, I would say. One is you've got to know your target and you have to know yourself. So what I mean by that is, first of all, when considering the target and whether it is a potential client, a potential referral source, that it's research, research, research. You've got to know what their needs are almost before they know what they are. And you have to be able to react quickly when you either read about a new issue, how can you package that as a problem solver for this particular target? Why would this target, take your call or respond to your overture? And it's usually that you're trying to offer something that other people have not yet. And so knowing your target, I think, is so very important. And on the second part, knowing yourself, I think you have to do what your personality is comfortable with. Not everybody can do that huge cocktail hour on the opening reception of ABI and find a connection in a room of over 1,000 people. That is really difficult. But if you excel in a situation where you're a member of the newsletter committee for one of the committees in ABI, that's where you start to make connections with, say, 5 people who are on that committee, who understand that you're reliable, you're smart, you follow through, and you do things when you say you're going to do things. And so I think you have to target goals that befit who you are. And that's why you need to understand yourself, where you thrive.
That's a great answer. Mia, do you have a response to that one?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Just a couple of things, actually. So one, again, all of our organizations, right, have loads of data, lots and lots of data, lists of parties, information, and everything else. So I would suggest that definitely, put together a good system to manage that. I mean, there's plenty of CRM systems available to really share your data, and make sure the people in your organization keep sharing the data with the sales folk. It's really important. So, absolutely agree with Toby's comment on research. Absolutely, quality conversations come from doing that prep work. And so you can't not invest in that time. And then one thing not to do. So I think a lot of people, when they make a call or what have you, that if, as you said, Katie, if they maybe don't get the first time, apparently it can take 18 approaches to people sometimes to get in the door, but keep trying. And have a good way of getting in the door, but always follow up. If you say you're going to do something, damn well do it. Otherwise, you won't get any further.
I love that. That will be the bumper sticker for this panel to take away for everybody. Okay, well, we have a celebrity sighting in our from a question. Judge Deal has asked, I'm curious as to how rainmaking has changed in the pandemic. That's a great question. I've gotten a lot of my business from clients who have seen me in action in court or a negotiation. That is not the same now. And that is a well-timed question, and one I think that we've all struggled with. Katie, you want to take the lead on that? And I know, Mia, we had kind of talked about that in preparation for the panel. Katie, what's your response on that one?
Rainmaking in a pandemic has been really, really tough, right? Not being out there, not seeing people, not getting that energy that you get from being out there and seeing people, I think has been really difficult. So just acknowledge it has been tough. And then my approach to it, once I've got over my funk of being in the pandemic, was to really, and this again, Toby's point here, I have some really good referral sources. I don't have thousands of them, but I have some really good referral sources, and they're all people I really like. And so that group of people were people I checked in on fairly regularly. And it was never calling and asking for work. And rarely was it about discussing, gosh, I need some work or anything like that, but just calling to check in on how they were doing, check in on whether they were going stir crazy in the pandemic. And all those kinds of conversations were a really, really good way to stay in front of people and stay top of mind. But as it was a very much of a lull in my business last year, though, you know, it was very much that just staying in touch and touch points as opposed to a direct ask for business or talk about business. And I think that people really appreciated it because we were all going a little stir crazy. And I certainly appreciated it when I got a nothing urgent, just checking in, seeing how you're doing call. And those calls meant a lot to me. So.
How about you, Mia?
Couple of things actually. So I think the pandemic has actually been amazing to make us all become human. What I mean by that is we've all brought our whole selves to work, whether you've got children in the background or coming on your Zoom calls when you've got an important pitch, or your dog's barking, or I don't know what. I've seen it all. I've even seen one of my colleagues' husbands in his underwear on a team meeting call. So, it's been transformational, actually, because, we've all welcomed the interruptions to our days of being, getting out of bed in the morning, doing your desk all day in your office, and then, going back again. So I think that it has meant you've had to be creative about what could be done from lockdown. And the UK has really, we've all had enough of it now. Thankfully, the doors are opening, but it's been a really long haul, particularly in the winter. So just some things that, and I said to, what can we do? And as a team here when at work, I said, what can we do to be thinking about how we're getting in front of our clients and understanding what's going on in other regions around the world, given that we can't get on a plane. And we came up with the idea about doing virtual business trips. And we've done some domestically in the US, and obviously we've done them all. The good thing is, right, you can go anywhere. Anywhere you fancy. So actually, this is a shout out for iWork, right? Because actually, if you want to go and meet your colleagues in Singapore, Hong Kong, Sydney, wherever it is, you can do it this way. And we actually put together an invitation. We'd obviously done our work as if we were physically going on the business trip with 2 or 3 days. Sent all of the targets an email to explain to them what we were doing and say, can we have a half an hour video call with you and the team to talk about business opportunities and what you're working on and all of that good stuff. And you know what? We smashed it again. We have had amazing business trips over the last few months, and the feedback has been great, and we'll carry on doing that. We will obviously get in front of people again when we're allowed to, but I think what you can achieve and the mindset of that trip is actually a really differentiator, and people, as you said, Katie, people really appreciated it.
Hey, Rebecca, can I add something there?
Sure.
I think one of the things I have shared with all of my mentees during the pandemic is always invite people to a virtual meeting, and always, always, always put your camera on. And I know there are some times when you just feel like having a regular phone call, but I think that the ability to rely upon this virtual platform has changed the way we will all develop business forever. I will, even when my client is like, you don't mind if I keep my camera off? And I'm like, I'm fine with that, but you're going to look at me because and I think there is some, exactly like Katie said, it's about building those personal relationships. And I also tend to do more of the virtual client development things. So if there's, a financial advisor who's doing, a wine tasting, or if there's a claims agent who's doing a mixology class, I find like I'm doing more of those now than I would have if I was just like, oh, I'm going to ABI or iWork in a few weeks. And so I don't need to, to pile on all of the activities. I know how hard it is to make those connections. And so when people invite me to their events, I'm actually more likely to accept them now. And I think they appreciate it. And I know it's given me the opportunity to meet folks in the practice that I hadn't worked with before.
That's a great answer. I think everyone's had to learn how to connect with someone via Zoom, which can be a bit of an uphill battle, especially if it's a new client or a new contact. Rosa, I'm curious, how about you? How would you respond to that question?
Well, I would agree with Katie. I mean, I think networking's been really different because we miss, this face-to-face communication, and you're not going now to cocktails or to conferences, and it's not so easy to meet people. But definitely following up, on your relationships, on your friends, on your customers by calling them, making sure they're fine and what they need. I think that's very important, because otherwise, well, you can just stay backwards. And I think it's imperative, to do that right now, because that's the way you can keep communication.
Well, and it's definitely allowed, I think, everybody to, like Tobey alluded to, you get a variety of options, and it's not necessarily, you get bombarded in one weekend with a physical conference, although I know that we all miss those. We'll welcome them back when those opportunities come again. So we've got about 4 minutes left. I just want to run around the panel and everybody give maybe a 15-second bit of wisdom. I'm going to put everybody on the spot since no one was prepared for this, but I tell you what, Mia, we're going to kick off with you. So what's your 20-second closing of wisdom for our attendees today?
Okay, well, I hope this is quite a good one. At least if you do a virtual event with alcohol, you haven't got to worry about getting home. That just crossed my mind. But no, actually, the one thing I would say is that, ladies and gents, actually take more risks with everything you're doing, because I think one of the main, real drivers of certainly my own personal success has been that, I do take a risk, and, I'm prepared to put myself on the line. We talked about opportunities and so on, but, always taking every opportunity. You are good enough, and knowing you're good enough, to go forward. So good luck.
That's fantastic. Katie, how about you?
We all work hard, right? And I think we all do a good job. And this will hark back to something Rose said: know what your boundaries are and take care of yourself. So whether that's getting some exercise every day, taking a walk, getting a good mental space, I think we all work hard enough to treat ourselves very, very well in this business.
I love that. Put yourself first in some instances, right? Rosa, how about you? What's your 20, 30-second closing words of wisdom?
Well, I would say you have to enjoy what you're doing. That's very important. You have to enjoy it. And well, it definitely, also you have to acknowledge that it does take sacrifices. Definitely there, life is about choices. So you have to make the choice and try to have a balance. It's difficult. We have to work a lot and you have so many things to do, but it is important, for your, to be healthy and to be happy and to enjoy what you're doing, to try to find a balance.
Very good. I like the balance. And it's not always easy to come by, right? Okay, Tobey, you get the last word.
Oh, that's a...
I'll play the Oscar music if you go over.
Exactly. That's a heavy crowd to wear. I would say challenge yourself to move outside of your comfort zone. And that usually means to try to connect with somebody that doesn't do what you do or doesn't look like you. So find someone who is more senior than you and someone that is more junior than you, and connect with that person because they're different. Whether it is because you're a woman of color, it happens to be a white man, or because you are a young white woman, you find a woman of color to connect with. Whatever will challenge you, I think, based upon where we stand both in the United States and in the country against the backdrop of, social justice, that those kind of skills are going to add to our ability to rainmake and make us all better people.
I love it. Well, thank you so much to all of our panelists. This was just fantastic and really interesting. Thanks especially to iWork. I think that this is a networking that we can all agree that allows our members the opportunities to network and to rainmake for whatever field they are in. Hold on to your CLE codes that you got throughout the presentation. And just a plug for the last 2 events that we'll have, May 25th and 26th, our judges panel, Demystifying Pathways to the Bench, which will be fascinating. So highly encourage that everybody tune in for those. That's it, ladies. Thank you so much for your time, and thanks to all the attendees, and have a great